dear sisters and brothers in Christ. First of all, I would like very thank to all of you for having an opportunity to present the result of my research in Gdańsk, but also the results of my interest in philosophy of law and philosophy of criminal law. I would say a little bit about the problem of mercy, justice, and dignity in the context of the personalistic concept of Christian mercy. Of course, I'm quite sure I will skip this part because I'm quite sure that all of you are familiar with the personalistic concept of Christian mercy. But I would like to say more about possible connections between modern, secular, state, criminal responsibility and Christian love and mercy. I think the merciful approach, just to initiate a discussion, is one of the greatest points connecting, for example, the human rights world, the dignity of the person, and the criminal justice, contemporary justice, with the Catholic Church. We can offer, as a Catholics, this merciful approach as a response to a non-human legal system, to a legal system degrading human being, human values, degrading equity, and degrading human rights. However, before I'm going further, I would like to speak very personally, please forgive me that. Vilnius, the city of mercy. My brief personal prelude, some of you may be familiar with Sister Michaela Rak, the director of the Vilnius hospices. I'm a volunteer of these hospices, and the Vilnius is my second home. So I would like to give you a promise that in Poland, I will often say that the most important city and diocese of mercy is not a Krakow, it's a Vilnius. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's be sure that we need some years to understand it in Poland, but it's a progress to understand it. We will understand it. I will speak with our bishop in Gdańsk, and we had such conference, amazing conference about the paint, Jezu ufam Tobie as well, so we do understand it. But why do I mention about the hospices? Not only about myself, but what's the most important challenge for social factors? You speak wonderful way about the economy. In the first lecture, there was a mention about the ecological, about the communication, dialogue, social factors. Let me say that way, it's very easy challenge to love someone who is in the position of needed. It's not a important, it's important, but it's not a harsh challenge to love someone with disabilities. But think about the criminalist. Think about wrongdoers. Do you really love criminalists? Are you able, do you have a capacity to love people who murdered? Do you really believe that everyone with no exceptions can really change? That says more about merciful approach than others. Because if we love only people who love us, if we love only people without guilty, by our judgment, of course, because we're all guilty, only Jesus and Holy Mary without, but others. So, first of all, I would like to tell you that you have to change your perspective. And the merciful approach with the context of the criminal responsibility shows a real challenge. Because, why? Because what do we know about the justice and about the mercy? My distinguished colleague from the University of Gdańsk, Professor Wojciech Zaleski, in his book about the reparatory justice, writes that the Christianity doesn't work with the contemporary criminal justice system and also with the criminal justice systems in Europe in history. So what can we observe? That we say we have to be merciful, the justice is important, and when we go further to the criminal legal responsibility, then we say, okay, let's focus only on justice. Let's keep the mercy. Mercy is for the individual's approach, for the confession, for the individual ethics. But mercy doesn't belong to the state justice. That's a general assumption. It's a misery of contemporary criminal justice. Not solely concerning on the retributive justice, which is closely rather to the Judaic tradition in some senses, but it's not generally open to merciful dialogue approach. There are some projects like reparatory justice, like restorative justice in contemporary legal philosophy, which opens, but they don't speak in the language of mercy. They don't use the religion language. So how can we connect what we need? First of all, what is mercy? So there were many opinions about what is mercy. Of course, we do all know Hesed, Rachem, Rachamim, Eleos, Caritas, Misericordia. But what about the kindness, empathy, grace? What about leniency? Of course, compassion. What about impunity from the perspective of criminal law? So, first of all, we have to understand that from the secular philosophical perspective, the mercy doesn't mean mercy into a biblical and theological context. So the first task is to put appropriate understanding of mercy into a legal philosophy. Because if we skip the appropriate understanding, appropriate biblical understanding mercy, proper personalistic concept of mercy, the mercy will be equal to an injustice. Only if we take into account a real approach. But if we focus on the personalistic concept, we will find that mercy without justice doesn't exist. And that allows us to have a coexistence. Without that, we will treat a merciful like a totally unacceptable approach into the criminal legal system. Also, it's interesting, we can put a question, is mercy a legal value? Could be any form of legal value, as justice, for example, or is always extraordinary, extra-legal value? And also there is interesting question, which is not my interest now, but for theologists, for the philosophers and so on, could be interesting, that if we put mercy as a legal value, it wouldn't be mercy itself according to the Christian mercy, individual mercy. It will be always mercy sui generis, the particular form of mercy by the state. So, let's go further. So, as I promised, I skipped the personalistic concept of Christian mercy, but let's focus what Pope Francis said, a few thoughts about the meaning mercy and about the criminal law, including the Christian approach, including the merciful justice. I don't want to read it, but the most important here is, like we all know, the abolition of the death penalty. But also, important things is that if I do not deny, Pope Francis states, if I do not deny the dignity to the worst of criminals, I will not deny it to anyone. I will give everyone the possibility of sharing this planet with me, despite all our differences. So what's important here, that there is no exceptions. There is no exceptions, really no exceptions. The second thing is that if we take into account the merciful approach, we need to build multidisciplinary focus, a fully human, free, informed, and responsible law. We have to be focused on humanizing and reconciling justice, a justice that leads the criminal through educational development and brave atonement to rehabilitation and reintegration into the community. So, what can we say about this? I quoted Pope from the encyclics and also from the letters to the Criminology Society. It's not important here in the context, but what's the most important, that what Pope Francis said, it's a practical application of general framework of personalistic concept of Christian mercy into the Catholic teaching about the penalty and justice. Take a look. In Divis et Misericordia, there is a general framework. Of course, it's a framework about the sinner, the reconciliation, the prodigal son. But in many, many statements of Pope Francis, you can find a direct application of merciful approach to solving the problem of criminal law itself. And this is a new thing. Here, of course, you have a picture, one from the many, many visits of Pope Francis in prisons, to see that we all need a mercy. Pope Francis, in his interview with Andrea Tornielli, said that when he saw the prisoners, he always thinks, why not me here? We can replace each other. That's a real no difference. And do we believe it or not? So, to sum up this point of my speech, sorry for a little bit longer, the fundamental tenets of contemporary criminal law systems generally prioritize justice and inherent dignity of individuals. But it's imperative to acknowledge that mercy not only integrates the virtue of love into penal system, but also underscores the pre-existing significance of dignity and justice inherent therein. So, if we put the Christian understanding of mercy into the philosophical sketch, philosophical concept, then we see it's not a contrary, it's complementary. Generally, philosophical discourse on mercy centers solely on antithetical relationship to justice. Like Jeffrey Maffei, Kazimierz Ajdukiewicz as a Polish philosopher, they said, the one thing is justice, especially state justice, another thing is like individual forgiveness. Probably there's the same acknowledgement you will meet in economy. The one thing is like the personal interactions, another one is state, social, markets interactions. But nevertheless, it's good to mention that several philosophical concepts incorporate mercy within the framework of criminal law. And what could be interesting here, for example, Martha Nussbaum, the philosopher, she is, let me say, very generally, she is like far away from the church. But the conclusion of hers, philosophical thoughts, through the Seneca, clemency, and narrative medical approach, as a result, is totally the same, maybe not totally the same, but it's very familiar with Christian approach. This means the mercy is universal, not only to close mercy into the church, but to give the mercy value to the whole world and to the legal system, besides the confessions, besides the are you left side of the politics, wherever. The philosophical approach, there is plenty. We discussed during the break about the Heidegger. Also, we create a communion between the people, and we belong to each other. In not every, and this is important, so we do know now that we have a particular understanding Christian mercy and personalistic concept of Christian mercy, which is also philosophical dimension, not only theological. We do know there is plenty of discussion in the contemporary philosophy who deny the value of mercy, but we do also know there is a lot of opinions that not deny. They include mercy into the criminal system, but they understand mercy differently than Christian proposal, but we can find a lot of similarities. And these similarities, it's something, there is our task to make it closer, to find the universal language to speak about. So, moving further. Of course, the canonist, jurists, we have a lot of canonist jurists here, and one of the most important questions, quae est justitianissi misericordia? There is no canon responsibility without equity. You are a bishop, as a higher judge, you will know that there is without equity, but what is in equity? Mercy. And merciful approach could be founded in the equity. All the criminal church responsibility is grounded on the justice, but as well on the mercy. And also now another question could be posed here, formulated here. Can we treat a canonic solutions, diritto canonico penale, as a model for a state responsibility? Some situations yes, some not. But generally, let me say just a few words about the concept of justice into the legal philosophy. So first of all, we have retributive justice. An eye for eye, a life for eye. Vendetta, it's not a retributive justice, it's a prior form, less developed, but this retributive justice doesn't focus on a human being as much. In the pedagogy of God, from the Old Testament to the New one, we have developing forms of justice. And what we can find, in my personal opinion, and after my studies, we can find a very wonderful concept, a merciful justice, which is the most Christian form of justice. And maybe this concept, it's appropriate to criminal justice. What does it mean? So merciful punishment, merciful justice brings us to another word, that we can have to be judged in the position that we judge ourselves. We have to judge with hermeneutic of mercy. We have to also skip all the forms of unhuman treatment, the capital punishment. We have to cancel all forms of degrading treatment, and we do have to remember and believe that even the worst criminal can change, and we have to give him or her the opportunity to change. So from this perspective, we know a lot of desiderata for contemporary criminal justice system. One picture for our Italian friends, if we have a lot of them, it's Margherita Pavesi Mazzoni, Giustizia e Misericordia, oil on canvas, wonderful painting. We spoke about the Rachamim, but it's a woman nature of our God, isn't it? And here you have as well a woman who symbolizes a merciful approach, and the man who symbolizes maybe more just approach. But this Giustizia e Misericordia, they have to cooperate each other. So, because I have lack of time, so there are some possible positions. The first position is exclusion of mercy and justice. As I said, or we choose only justice, solely justice, or we do choose mercy. Then we can make a dialectic contrast between mercy and justice. Mercy belongs to the non-legal world. It's always contrasted with justice according to the contemporary philosophy, not according to the theology and Christian theology. But justice also is contrasted with mercy. So what we can do, and I think what's already we're doing now here during this conference, we try to find arguments, we try to provide arguments that there is possible convergence of mercy and justice also with the social dimensions. And this is like a real justice. And my proposal is like, don't understand law also only as a lex, not only as a justice, but we can also understand the legal system as a place for merciful application. We can find a lot of institutions, not only just a pardoning by the president, but not just amnesties, but in general criminal court works, general criminal judgment, for example, individualization of responsibility. What chances did you have in life? What's your education? What's your past? What about the future, and so on? So if you take into account the individualization, it's a merciful approach, not only a justful and just approach. What about the forgiveness? Very short one. So we can speak about the conditional absolution, so we forgive you if you make a statement that you're sorry. But can we trust you? Maybe you want to get a forgiveness only because to have a limitation of criminal responsibility. But also, we can ask, do we have any, can forgiveness be extended to all offenses? Can we forgive everything? According to the Christian belief, we are obliged, like even not obliged, that's obvious that we can and we have to forgive everything. But in some presentations here, there was a mention about the Shoah and Holocaust. And there is a lot of people who contestate a merciful approach on this particular point. No, maybe there is unforgivable. So this is also a challenge for us and for the criminal responsibility. And so just to sum up, maybe, no, I don't have still more time, I know it. So just to sum up, maybe you will have further questions. So what can we say about the connection between the mercy recognized as a particular non-legal or maybe legal value in the context of criminal responsibility and criminal justice system? Mercy could be a specific legal value and could be significant. It's maybe applicable to judicial implementation. Mercy be even a base decision and could be somehow incorporated. It's a very difficult problem, but let me say that way, why do we say that state has no right to forgive? Of course, we base on the individual ethics. But why? If we take into account that mercy has a social dimension, we also have to admit that maybe there are some circumstances in which the judge can forgive. Also, we have merciful punishment, of course, the strong voice against the capital penalty. Like, there were so many discussions, for example, in Polish context, about the France's decision, which is, I think that it's like obvious decision from the perspective of mercy. But so many contestation, so many. Why? Because we still think, okay, God, you say one thing, but we know better. But we know better. Also, maybe the Lithuanian thing here now. The implications of mercy for criminal legislative process. According to the visit of Pope Francis, the Seimas provide a statutory law of amnesty. And they, in the preamble of the project, they wrote that we're doing that because of Pope Francis' visit to commemorate the Pope John Paul II, also the value of mercy. However, in the final act, the mercy was just only humanitarian criminal law. But if we think deeper, we will find that humanitarian law means also a merciful criminal law. Here are some examples that relazioni risolte tra misericordia e giustizia for our Italian friends. As far as I know, there is plenty of them here. And just to the general conclusion, in one of the book, there is a sculpture on the law faculty, very particular sculpture. Aesthetic is not a good one, in my opinion. However, it's nice because we have a Themis, a symbol of justice, and the angel of mercy. And what Welling writes about it, mercy is not simply a countermeasure or complement to justice. Rather, mercy watches over justice, not to thwart or deny justice's rightful claims, but to ensure that our practices of justice are never conducted solely according to calculation and measurement, but are also weighed or motivated by mercy and love. So, as a philosopher, I will leave you not with the answers, but with the questions. Does merciful jurisprudence, the merciful approach, embody the evolving criminal justice paradigm? Is it possible? Here you have the artwork with the jury of the future, the men and women. So you see the merciful approach and just approach in the context of symbol, the Hesed and Rahamim, let's say that way. And is this jury of the future is the one that might temper justice with mercy. So, ačiū visiems už viskas.